Well, Michael, we seem to have settled on about 100 participants in the room right now. Should we go ahead and get this started and see where we can go?
I think that's a great idea, Matt. Thanks everybody for your patience, and thank you for joining us today.
So,
No, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
no problem. So obviously this is an info session for University of Washington, the MHCI+D program, specifically geared towards people interested in the application process and hoping to learn a little more about the program. The two of us you'll hear doing most of the talkings. First will be Michael Smith, our program director.
Hi, this is Michael Smith, your program director.
And second will be me, Matt Bartels, your academic and career advisor in the program. We're going to be joined a bit later. On the line also are Nora Owens. She's a current student in the 6th cohort, and VJ Pharma. He's a graduate in the 2018 class. The two of them will join us and talk a little about the student experience in the program. Our agenda is pretty straightforward today. We're going to first talk about the program, go over a little bit about the program philosophy, talk about the curriculum a bit. Then we'll get into student experience with VJ and Nora, move from there to career talk, and then a little bit more about the application, leaving a lot of time for nuts and bolts and questions that you might have. One warning as we get going in here, we do have quite a bit of information on our website, so we're going to be presenting material here, but you also can find quite a bit there, so we don't feel the need to just duplicate the website. We hope this will be something that will be additive to what you can find when you're on the website.
Great, so this is Michael again. I'm gonna kick things off by talking broadly about the program and all of its pieces. So the first thing I wanna do is address the program philosophy. And so this is a little bit about what informs our perspective and why MHCI+D is the way it is and what makes it unique in a lot of ways. So first and foremost, we're about creating thoughtful technology experiences. So we are interested specifically about technology, and we apply the application of human-centered design as an overall approach in combination with training and approaches that are all about design thinking as business practice. So we are at the combination of the intersection of both of those things. And so we can kind of see that we're about, also in particular, the key word on this one is thoughtfulness and appropriateness. We're very much around not just creating the new thing, but the right thing. So second, and one of the things that defines us more than anything else is our interdisciplinarity. As we'll talk about later, our program sits in no department at the University of Washington. It is given and directed by an interdisciplinary group that called Design Use Build. But as a result, that interdisciplinarity between art and design, engineering, informatics and the information school, and computer science all directly inform the way that we approach the work that we do. And in addition to that interdisciplinarity, we're intensely collaborative. We really like to work together and partner, not only in the way that we teach, so all of our courses that are at the studio level are co-instructed by different faculty members, so you'll have multiple instructors in our studio courses, but also in the way that we learn. A lot of our work in the program is built through cooperation and teamwork in particular. The team environment is vital. We believe in small teams, and nearly all of the work that we do in the program is done through cooperation and collaboration with other people in the cohort. Third, every aspect of what we do, through learning, making, critiquing the work that we do, reflecting on why we do the work, and then refining the work that we do, is all done iteratively. So a lot of the structure of our classes is meant to be not focusing and embedding on the final outcome, but the process that we use to get to that final outcome as well, and to take chances, risky things, learn from those activities, and then refine not only ourselves, but also the work that we do through smaller, more chancy activities. Next, a core part of our philosophy is intersection with industry practitioners. So when you come to MHCI+D, it's not merely enough that you come and learn from academics and people that are doing thorough research in HCI and design, but we also reach out to the broad Seattle and San Francisco design communities to help our students better understand the industry perspective on their projects, even to the point where many of our projects are mentored by industry people. So even this quarter right now, our studio is mentored by Primera Blue Cross as we look at new ways of exploring helping people find medical care. That's just one example. The studio for next year may be on a new and different topic, but we're really interested in soliciting feedback from people who have practical industrial experience that can help refine not only our practice, but also even what sort of challenges are good for us to use as learning case studies. That carries over through all of our studio courses and very much into our capstone process, where the capstone teams are paired with industry mentors or sponsors to help shape the project and to help learn and synthesize a lot of different perspectives on a self-defined project. And then fifth and finally, we are committed not only to helping educate and the next generation of design leaders or craftsmen, but also leaders. And so we see this as being that our graduates have upward career trajectories by not only knowing what we do as especially technology-focused designers, but getting really involved in the why we do things and being able to articulate and make a case for why design is important within many different technology contexts. So we would like to see MHCI+D students and graduates consistently asking the hard questions about the role that design plays and being equipped with the knowledge necessary to really be leaders of industry in the relationship to design and execution of design ideas.
All right, so I'll talk a little bit about program structure. This is Matt again. Just some basic points that are kind of already touched on with a little bit of the philosophy that Michael covered and will be reinforced through our discussions of the curriculum next. The MHCI+D program functions as a cohort model of learning. And that means that we put the entire class together and you collaborate with your classmates throughout this program closely. You're usually working on small group projects for most of your coursework, and we have a studio space that kind of becomes your home. And we believe you can learn quite a bit by that close interaction for an immersive year with the same cohort of students. So you're not all off doing different programs. Largely, you're together through much of the year. The cohort size will be about 42 students. And again, as we talk about the curriculum, you'll see next, most of the curriculum is defined around required courses, our core curriculum. About 85% of what you're going to be studying is in a course that's together with the other 41 students in your cohort. There are only a few extra credits that are going to be used to take electives outside of that cohort experience. So when you imagine what kind of a program is right for you, the cohort model and being together in the studio as a group is really central to the structure of how we organize. And again, Michael mentioned this a bit earlier, but we're an interdisciplinary program, and this is just to reiterate the 4 schools that sponsor us here at the University of Washington: the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering, the Information School, Human-Centered Design and Engineering, and the School of Art History and Design. Together, our instructors come from those schools. A lot of our elective choices are from those schools. our faculty advisory board is all built from people from those schools who are interested in this field and have come together. So that's where we kind of form ourselves, is from the interdisciplinary meeting of people interested in HCI and HCD coming from these primary locations.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, we have this cohort model, and we have a studio environment. That studio manifests itself through our core curriculum. So you'll see it here. Our curriculum, again, students will take 46 credits overall over the course of 11 months throughout 4 academic quarters. And it roughly shapes out to be like this. So throughout the quarter, or through the general structure is, during the main part of the school year in fall, winter, and spring, you'll have a single studio course and a single lecture course, and I'll get into details more about that. Then you'll also have our overall DUB seminar process. DUB is the interdisciplinary research organization that is design, use, build, that is around faculty collaboration and is the general body of HCI and design research throughout the University of Washington. Additionally, we'll kick off the fall quarter with a 1-week intensive design sprint that we call Immersion Studio, with the idea there that you're learning to know something about the studio process, around what makes a studio important and how it as a learning model is different. And then that will, and also introduce you to the university and to what it's going to be like to be an MHCI+D student. In addition, there is a couple of 1-credit courses, Capstone Planning, which is a class that is all about understanding what makes for a good team and what makes for a good capstone project. And then additionally, we also offer a 1-credit portfolio course that's for people that want to either work on improving their portfolio or are interested in seeking feedback or help or accountability in constructing a design portfolio. In addition, throughout each of the quarters, we have space for additional electives in each of our member departments. So that's between 1 and 5, or really between 0 and 5 credits every quarter. Most students take about 1 elective a quarter. So I want to break down a little bit about the kind of the core elements of each of these things and talk about them each in turn. So while many of these classes are done together, the most important aspect of the program and what differentiates it from many of the other programs throughout the country and the world that are offering a specific HCI+ design degree is the way that our studio operates. So for us, studios are project-oriented courses where instructors work not with minimal lectures, but mostly in a kind of like master and apprentice style of work, where we provide you a project idea, a loose brief around what sort of topics we want to pursue as part of this studio. And then through that, we then work iteratively and collaboratively on developing a design response to a problem set by the studio. So not only is it like an intellectual process and a workshop, but it's also a space and a mode of doing work. Here, this image that you're seeing was from a project team that worked with NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory 2 years ago for their Capstone project around some formative design research related to the use of virtual reality in project planning and collaboration for a space mission. And so it was a satellite mission to Europa, I believe. So they, this is kind of an outcome of one of the studios, is this kind of like large, intense data analysis process that, you'll work with your mentors and peers in order to achieve an end that you as an individual would not be able to achieve on your own. And so we do a lot in these studios around externalizing our work, seeking feedback from others, modeling and learning from each other, and helping build and make work better constantly. One of the characteristics of our studios is we should be regularly seeking critique and feedback on our design work, and even in the way that we plan and do research design. And so we'll work together in these studio spaces and in this environment. Another aspect of this too is that we don't use classrooms. We have a studio, we have a space, and that studio is for the students 24 hours a day. The instructors will be in residence some part of the week, but most of the time it's your space to work, and it's your space to collaborate, and it's your space to make it as you will. And that's a really big characteristic of our studio. If you apply and should you be admitted to the program, the Visitors Day materials that we'll cover later or early next year will be an awful lot about that environment and kind of understanding why it's a different model for instruction than I think a lot of other technology-oriented programs have. So in combination with our studio courses, and I'll go into detail about what the studio topics are also a series of lecture courses that cover the three major areas of HCI scholarship. And that is usability and user research, helping you better understand how to plan and execute design research, design evaluation, and usability. There's also a course on user interface software and technology, which is a deep theory course about why user interfaces operate and function the way they do, and where they came from, and where they're going in their future. And then finally, Designing Interactive Systems, a lecture that is all about the relationship of the design process to the design of technology products, and why human-centered design has become one of the primary modes of thinking about creating design responses. So that's the core of the lecture series. There are 3 credits. They're usually taught by senior faculty, and they are a really great orientation to the deep theory of HCI and design. These are also paired with Dub Seminar, and the Dub Seminar is a weekly plenary and small group activity where we invite people doing really forward-thinking research in HCI and design. We bring them onto the University of Washington campus, or they are talking about the work that they do at the University of Washington. And it's an opportunity to engage with what research is on the cutting edge, and also to engage with people, broadly speaking, around the entire university HCI and design community. As we said, we're made up of 4 different member departments, and there are many master's students and PhD students on campus that are each working in their own projects and different approaches. And this is a great way to learn, extend, and network within the broader university community, as well as to see and intersect with some of the best minds in industry. We regularly have visitors from Google, Hewlett-Packard, Oracle, Microsoft Research, and other organizations talking about some of the research they're doing within their own organizations. And it's a great opportunity to meet with some of these thinkers and researchers as a way of seeing what the landscape of HCI looks like today at its most cutting edge. And then finally is the Capstone Project. So Capstone for us is a 6-month project that involves around 10 weeks of formative research and about 10 weeks of iterative design execution and evaluation. The Capstone projects, each team is paired with an industry mentor that helps them through a project typically of their own definition. So that is to say that other programs, an industry sponsor will bring a project that students will work against. One of the things that we do at MHCI+D is we let students self-define their own project and work on things that are relevant and interesting to them, and that they can form that in cooperation with the mentor or sponsor that they're paired with. But it is typically a project of your own definition. So in that regard, it sits not somewhere between a master's thesis and like an industry-sponsored capstone project. There's a lot of variations in what this can entail, and we've worked with many different companies over the years. So typically, like this year, I think we're seeing sponsorship from the Google Artificial Intelligence team, Frog Design, IDEO, Amazon, NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, in addition to many others. So it's these companies that are meeting with us and sponsoring our projects are some of the ones that are doing some of the most cutting edge and interesting work in HCI and design today. And there's lots of ways that it's, again, they're small group teams. So most of our capstone teams will be around 3 people. So we don't expand the size of teams. Most groups are very small, intimate, and as a result, you have a lot of opportunity for hands-on work and really having a big role to play in the execution of a meaningful design project. So this is the overall structure of the program. So in the fall, we do the design research course, and our studio in the fall is mostly centered around changing human behaviors. So that's the broad brief. The projects that we work on will be around identifying human behaviors and finding ways that technology can modify or support those behaviors. In the winter, you'll take your user interface software and technology course, and then we'll work with Prototyping Studio, which is all about using prototyping as a mode of problem solving, and especially in looking at embodied interactions. So this is technology efforts that appear beyond the screen. We'll regularly explore things like connected devices, accessibility, and in particular, non-visual user interfaces, things like conversational UIs or other aspects of user interfaces that are either emergent or not in your standard, like make an app kind of thing. Then in the spring, you'll take the Design of Interactive Systems course, and then the Research Studio is done in service of your capstone project. So that's when you will do the formative research to understand deeply user needs for a project of your own definition, and then use design research in order to identify a concrete challenge and to begin to ideate what possible responses could come from those user behaviors. In addition to that, we'll hold Dove Seminar every quarter across the entire year. And then in addition to that, there are many different electives available for things such as an introduction to interaction design or advanced interaction design. You'll also find courses on physical computing, on usability, like an entire course just on conducting usability studies if you're interested in UX research. There are also courses like designing information experiences from the information school that Jay Poivrock hosts, and quite a few other classes, especially like in information visualization or typography even. There's lots of opportunities to intersect with each of our different member departments, and what those courses are vary from year to year, but we have a lot of great suggestions, and I think there's a lot of deep area and interest in our elective pool. So again, you'll need around 7 credits of electives. That's usually takes the form of at least two electives. Most people end up taking between 2 and 3, just as a way of either filling a skill gap, which is to say there's some element that you want to learn more about, or you want to deepen a specialization. So that's particularly common for the people going in and interested in pursuing jobs in UX design or product design, that often take courses that will help them deepen a specialization, let's say in interaction design or in, let's say, entrepreneurship, which is a class that many of our students take offered from the Ellen School. Matt, you want to take this one away?
Yeah. So with all of that talk about the curriculum and the structure, we wanted to talk a little more about career development and career outcomes in the program. And so that's what we'll cover next before we go into the student experience section. So when it comes to career development in the program, I think the first important tenet that we believe in here is that you're really coming to this program to learn something. So this is a program where we're going to first and foremost be asking you to focus on what you're doing in class. You're theoretically coming here to pick up a good number of skills and really ramp up your abilities. So starting out on the job search on day one is not the way that we approach things when it comes to career development. That said, we've really come to develop quite a few resources along the way to help you out in figuring out what direction you want to go and then working through your path till you find your jobs. So first, we can look at resources that are available within our program itself, our MHCI+D resources. One was already mentioned by Michael. In the spring, we have a portfolio class. If you know anything about the field, you know that portfolios are one of your most important job search pieces of selling. So you're going to want to have a well-developed portfolio, and there's an elective in the spring that you can take if you want to get your portfolio up to full speed in time for the job search. In addition to that, throughout the year, especially winter, spring, and into summer quarter, I hold a number of brown bag job search skill building workshops. These are more designed around helping out those who want the help on topics related to the nuts and bolts of going through the job search. So we start out talking about networking, how to talk with alumni and non-alumni, informational interviews. Then we move into maybe some company research work and figuring out where the jobs are, and then talk a lot about what the actual application and interview process is like and practice quite a bit. So behavioral interview questions, practice, learning to tell your about me story, going through everything about your portfolio presentation and up through the whiteboard challenges that are a part of some of the job interview process. All of those happen at our brown bag lunches every couple of weeks. That's another piece of career development that we offer. Alumni are a really central part of a lot of the work that gets done around career development here. We're a small program with 5 years of graduating students so far, about 150 alumni out there. Because of our cohort model and because of the process of going through this experience together, we really have an extremely loyal and giving alumni network that comes back and helps us out along the way in a number of different points. You'll see them at happy hours. You'll get together with them for informational interviews, maybe learn more about a company that you're going to apply to. We also have some more formal ways to interact with alum. One of which, VJ, who we'll be talking in a little bit, was instrumental in getting set up last year. We realized, talking mostly VJ and I, and talking about interactions with alumni, that we wanted to set up a mechanism for a little more long-term relationship with a single alum. So you could feel comfortable going back and talking over the course of months about the various stages of both the program and what you're up to. And so we launched the Alumni Mentoring Program, and that pairs a couple of students with an alum for ongoing regular meetings to give them another source of guidance as they go through the program. Beyond that, we have a career conference in the summer that brings a number of employers to campus to meet with students in the program. It's more of a practice session than a direct finding a job session. It gives you a chance to really practice the skills that you've been developing, like portfolio presentation or whiteboarding challenge, or all other elements of interviewing. Sometimes that leads to job opportunities, but for the most part, it's designed around giving you a chance to practice in front of industry professionals. And then, as Michael mentioned, there are a number of other opportunities to interact with industry professionals throughout the program. We bring them into courses for crits. You have industry sponsors and sometimes studio sponsors for different courses. We think it's important to be able to start building up your comfort level with talking with more senior practitioners and not just your colleagues and your recent alumni friends. Beyond the resources we have at MHCI+D, we're also embedded in the University of Washington, which is a large public state university. And as you can imagine, there's a lot going on here. One thing that we've talked about before with the DUB seminar and elsewhere is the DUB community, the Design Youth Build community. This is a great resource for broadening who you can talk to on campus that's interested in the same field. So the DUB community brings together graduate students and professors from a number of different programs who share the same interest. And that can be a great networking resource for you as you learn about more opportunities and sort of broaden your areas of interest. The UW in general also has a career and internship center that runs workshops on every element of the job search and industry presentations almost every night of the week, more than you could ever attend. They have those huge career fairs, things like that. On the UW campus, there's also a couple of incubators for startups. The business school has a robust entrepreneurship program that has case competitions and speakers and the like. So those of you interested in startup culture or entrepreneurship, there are those elements available. Maker spaces on campus can be another resource to look at. Once you get beyond the UW, it's, I think, also very valuable for our program that we happen to be located here in Seattle. One of the advantages we have being in Seattle is that this is one of the top places in the world for people doing work in this field. You kind of have the Bay Area, and you have up here for folks who are practitioners and more senior practitioners working either in technology, big tech companies, smaller tech companies, or in design studios working with a lot of those larger tech companies. The atmosphere here outside of the campus walls still has a lot to offer when it comes to learning about the field and meeting people involved. So there are meetups and hackathons and conferences and just ways to meet with people who kind of speak your own field language out here. And I think that environment in Seattle is something that we shouldn't underestimate, because it really allows you to go and interact with people who aren't just here on campus. So those are kind of the basics of career development and what we offer. When we talk about outcomes, just to touch briefly on this, you can see these are some of the typical roles that our students, once they graduate, have gone into. The role titles give you some basic idea. They're basically organized around UX researchers. So researchers and designers are the two broad divides. And then a lot of different names depending on the companies, some names with meaning involved in them and others a little more amorphous. What we find is we find our students all going into a lot of these different roles throughout their first few years out of the program, sometimes moving up towards product manager roles and the like as they move further along and into more senior roles. Some of the companies that we didn't list every company that we've had alumni at. When you think about where you go out of this program, in general, our largest industry for employment is, of course, the technology sector. Our top employers are the big tech companies. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Apple, and Facebook are our largest employers. But in addition to that, we kind of are spread out among a number of different companies. Some of them are smaller tech companies and startups. We also have a number of alumni going into design studios, and some going outside of the tech area. Premera Blue Cross in the healthcare space, for example, New York Times and other journalism places. So media, journalism, other elements. There are options beyond the tech sector, but when we think about where our alumni go, the tech sector is definitely the largest employer. And Seattle and the Bay Area are the largest locations for our alumni. So next, I think we want to talk to VJ and Nora, our alum and our student, see if they have anything more to add here. So let me introduce both of you. VJ and Nora, if you're around and want to unmute yourself, I see VJ's unmuted.
Hi.
Hey, VJ. Hey, Nora. So why don't each of you just give us a little bit of introduction about where you are now, and we can go from there and talk a little more about what your experience was in the program. So, VJ?
Sure. So I'm VJ. I'm currently I'm a UX researcher at Smartsheet. Prior to that, I was in cohort 5. I have a pretty broad background. So I studied accounting and I work in financial services. And basically, I worked on this research project at that accounting firm, and I worked alongside a couple of designers, and that was my introduction to UX. And I was like, I'm pretty interested in this. And it was pretty last minute when I decided to apply. And luckily, the MHCI+D program was the only program that I applied to. I'm going to be fully transparent. It's because it did not require a GRE score, and I put all my eggs in one basket. I'm not so sure if that's the best way to go about it. But yeah, that was basically my journey into the program. And I guess one of the biggest takeaways for me in the program was kind of like challenge the way you thought, or challenge my thought process. And it kind of molded a creative thinking into my brain. I don't know how else to explain it, but yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Yeah. Hey, so my name is Nora. I am part of the current cohort number 6. We are at I think it's, week 3, week 4 of our program.
Just beginning.
Yeah, just the very beginning. But it's been really great so far. I come from a background of studying art history within a liberal arts context. So I had some sociology, some anthropology, some psychology, some computer science, some biology, some economics. That was all still part of my undergraduate learning experience. But within art history, I worked in a number of museums in the kind of education and public programming space. And then I worked in a commercial art gallery. And after my undergraduate, transitioning to working in the art field full time, I really found that there was, other ways of thinking and approaching problems that I was missing. And there are starting to emerge very few positions in the art world, where people get this opportunity to think about how to introduce technology into public institutions and engage with the public. And I'd love to do that job in 10 or 15 years from now when that, exists at every museum. So I chose MHCI+D over other schools that I applied to because of the cohort size. I love the fact that it's a small cohort. It seems kind of scary to go into it and be like, oh, whoever shows up to go to school with me, those are going to be a defining part of my experience. But kind of putting trust in that process, I found that every single person in my cohort comes from a different, cultural background, or a different place that they were living, or a different educational background. And it's been really exciting. Every group that I've worked with so far brings a lot of different experiences to the table. And a big sell for me on MHCI+D was the emphasis on design thinking. So the program is short, it's intense. It's not just about skill building, although you do that. It's really about teaching you how to think and, engaging in a lot of these design thinking methodologies.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. VJ, did you want to talk a little bit about what it was like being a student throughout the year? What it was like basically living in the studio, and how that student experience ran over the time?
Yeah, sure. So it's a year, right? It's less than a year. And it goes by so fast. It's like right from immersion studio to graduation, there's always something to do. And a lot of it is team-based. You're going to have to get comfortable working with people with different backgrounds. And it's not like you work with the same 3 or 4 people all year long. Capstone, you will be spending more time with the same people. It's also like a good time to explore. You'll learn more about this T-chart where you go into both breadth and depth. So you go into breadth of design from research, ideation, or interaction, or visual. You'll touch on those, but then you'll have this specialization where you go deep into one of those tracks, and that's where you can take those electives. So for me, I knew pretty quickly that I was interested in research, so I focused all my electives on research. What else? I lived on campus. So I moved from North Carolina to Seattle. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to live on campus so I can live close to the studio and near all the electives. So that was really convenient. Matt, is there anything specific?
I think that's pretty good to get a starting feel for it. Nora, how is your elective going so far? Electives are one of the pieces that we maybe haven't talked as much about. So can you maybe talk about what elective you're taking? And I know it's just beginning, but
Yeah, definitely. So I'm taking Intro to Interactive Design, which is taught by Axel Rossler, who is one of our professors who will actually teach one of our lecture courses in spring. So he is very familiar with the MHCI+D program. The class is comprised of about 40 students. About a quarter of them are graduate students, some of my cohort members, as well as Masters of Design students. And then the rest of the class is mostly juniors and seniors in the interactive design program. So it's actually really great to learn from them because they have more formal interaction design training than I do. And so we've been going over the history of interaction design a little bit, and now we are just turning towards our project, which we got yesterday. Yeah, yesterday.
What's your topic?
So our topic is music and listening to music. And so first we're going to storyboard out interactions that exist. So, who's listening, where are they listening, what's the context, and how are they actually hearing music? And then by the end of it, we will have proposed and prototyped essentially a new way to experience music.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Every year the topic for that course approaches some new theme like this, and it's always interesting to learn what's going on in there.
Yeah.
So both for VJ and Nora, do you have any advice for folks who are contemplating different programs and thinking about, how to select between them? VJ, we know your selection was based on no GRE requirement, but anything else you want to throw in there that people should keep in mind? Because presumably a lot of people are looking at a lot of different programs.
Yeah. So there are a lot of, there's not just your traditional grad programs, there's also boot camps out there, and there's online programs, and there's things abroad as well. So just keep an open mind and explore and think about what works best for you. If you want something fast, more more intimate in terms of size, then consider the MHCI+D program. If you're comfortable with a larger classroom and more slower pace, you can consider part-time programs. One thing that I would say in the application process is just when you do apply, have a compelling story. You should maybe take the GRE. I'm just reading it. Just have a compelling story about yourself and how this program would help you get to where you want to be. Think about what you have, what you've done, the skills that you acquired, and what you want to learn and where you want to be, and how this specific program will help you get there. As long as you kind of stay true to that and do your own research, meet professors, go ahead and send them emails. I know some folks come to visit the studio sometimes and sit in on some classes. That's such a great way to get a feel for, hey, is this the kind of environment I want to be in? So yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, when you are, there's a great number of programs out there that, you can all come out of them and get a good job and have great connections. But I think what really mattered for me was the kind of culture fit. So I was lucky enough to be able to attend a few accepted student stay visits, and a lot of schools do make that financially possible. So that was great to find out. I just assumed I wouldn't be able to visit at all. And in visiting, find, current students you can talk to, professors you can talk to. And when I came to MHCI+D, I was pretty sure it was going to be my top choice, but every single current student and prospective student I talked to was interesting and excited. And I just wanted to sit down and have dinner and talk to them more about, their life and their interests. And it really kind of energized me. And I would also suggest try and scope out online any kinds of syllabi you can find from courses or actual course material. Some other programs I looked at, it felt like I have to take a lot of courses that weren't as like rigorous or challenging. So it kind of swayed me towards UW. Yeah.
Awesome. Nora, VJ, thanks so much for taking the time out of your evening to come and speak about your experiences. It's really great.
You're welcome.
Yep. So I think some people have been asking about applications and one of the details. We'll answer more questions as much as we can. I mean, I'm glad to see as we're accumulating some in the chat. We'll come back and we'll get to as many as possible. This is our last kind of speaking topic, and then we'll just focus on questions for the balance of the time tonight. So, so we're going to, let's see. So the next step is, I want to talk a little bit about who's the right person for the program. Give me 1 second. I have to dismiss the chat window because it's obscuring my slides. So one of the things that we're thinking is about, one of the first and most important things that we look for are people that are curious and thoughtful about people and technology and the intersection of those two groups. So one of the things that I can say is it's not enough to be excited about apps or the role that phones play in people's lives. It has to be particular, and you have broader questions about why those things are the way they are, and you want to be able to demonstrate to the review committee that you've done some careful consideration about the intersection of people and technology. So not only in particular, like what stories might you tell about how those things were provoked or where they came from. You want to find meaning in collaboration. It's really important that you know and recognize that all of our projects are team-based, and that we specifically build intellectually and background diverse teams. So there will be moments where you're going to need to lean on others to fill in some gaps, or to be leaned upon for your own expertise. And so we really not only look to build a learning environment that is about what teachers can impart to you and help you through, but also in the ways that you can help each other in the studio. To that end, it's really important that you are self-directed and driven. There's a lot of aspects of this course which are about knowing and dwelling in really ambiguous spaces where you may not have an idea about what to do next. And it's really important that you are ready to make some choices and to really puzzle this out. It is different from a lot of other programs. We will not, like the design process, we'll prescribe some activities, but there will be times where you want to, or you'll need to fill in some gaps that that is not part of a particular plan for the project because of the specific needs of a project you're tackling. So another impulse to all of this is, even though we support both people who are interested in research and design, you really want to demonstrate and have an impulse towards making or creation. A lot of this, the coursework is about doing meaningful design work. And if you are not interested in what gets made, then I think the people that I've worked with and students that have done that before, I think become sometimes frustrated. So you really want to be able to say, not only are you interested and thoughtful about technology, but you want to have that impulse towards making, and that you want to get started in doing that. One thing to consider is that this program is very intense. You do, most students do between, I think like up to 50 credits over the course of the entire year. And that requires a very deliberate commitment in time and financial resources. Most people, we actually discourage people from working even part-time while they're in the program, because there is so much to do in the one that you have. And then finally, like knowing and understanding what makes our teaching model unique and like how we approach the work of learning HCI and design. Know and recognize that you want to embrace the cohort and the studio, and you want to know both of those. You want to be in an intimate situation with not a lot of people, and that you want to work in an environment that's about externalizing your work and seeking advice and feedback and working specifically on projects, which is to say, like working towards creating real design outcomes. So that's why I think from like who's right for the program, and this is an awful lot about what the admissions committee looks for when selecting people and how they're admitted. Matt, do you want to talk about our due dates?
Sure. So I would encourage you, when you're looking back over the notes about this, to focus on that last slide a good bit, to think about what the types of things, what Michael said at the end there about what the admissions committee is looking for and what we're looking for. That slide really does encompass it, even though it might sound abstract. So now we're going to do nuts and bolts. First important date to know is January 15th. That's when applications are due. We don't do rolling admissions. We don't have early admissions or anything, so you can't be late. Get your materials all in by January 15th, but don't worry about any advantage by getting them in early or anything. You've got until January 15th. Just don't miss that deadline. The second big date is March 15th, roughly. March 15th is when we'll send out offers of admission. So after 2 months of deliberating with the admissions committee, March 15th comes. That's when you'll hear the results of the admissions process. And then the third date, another 15, April 15th. That's when you make your decision and you choose which program you're going to go to and tell us you commit by putting in a deposit here. So January 15th, March 15th, and April 15th. Those are your three key dates to have in mind down the road. So application materials. We'll talk a little about this. I know that it's now 7 o'clock, so we want to make sure to leave a lot of time for questions, and then there have been a lot of really good ones. Just know that we break down these application material pieces on the website quite a bit as well. Some of these are straightforward. You're going to turn in an unofficial transcript from anywhere that you've done credit-worthy college work, that you need a GPA of 3.2 or above. And that can be either your major, your last 2 years, or your overall GPA. See our website for more on that. 3 letters of recommendation. Highly recommended that you speak with those people and have recommenders who can speak strongly to the type of work that you do and to how you approach projects. A resume or CV, that's especially useful for those of you with more work experience to show us something beyond your schoolwork. And down at the bottom of the right column, the application fee of $85. I'd say those 4 pieces are pretty straightforward. Your personal statement and your supplementary materials, those are the where you're really going to focus and make your case for why this is the right program for you. So the personal statement is your narrative where you connect the dots and tell us, what is your background? How did you become interested in this? How have you shown your interest in this field? And why is this program the right direction for you to take your career the next step? We are, as we've said a number of times, we're an interdisciplinary program that pulls people in from all different backgrounds. So there's no right personal statement, but you still have to do the work of connecting those pieces together and explaining why your background is a good background and is one that will complement the rest of the cohort and add to the group learning experience. So spend time on that personal statement. Supplementary materials are the other key piece. This is where you show us your work process and help us understand how you've undertaken projects in the past. If you're coming from a related discipline, you might have a portfolio already. That's what our mental model is when we think about supplementary materials. But we really do want to make this available for people to show us work in any field that they've come from in whatever manner they have available. So put together examples of your work product. We've had people from research labs share with us maybe a research paper they worked on with a little understanding about what they were researching. A developer might give us their GitHub page and explain some of the projects they worked on there. It can be a number of different types of things. Supplementary material is an optional component to the application, but it's strongly recommended. It really is an excellent way to give us a chance to understand what you have done and where you're coming to this program, with what kind of background you're coming to this program. Michael, did you have any more thoughts on supplementary materials? That's usually one that we have a lot of questions about down the road.
I do want to say and encourage that, like, portfolios are typical, but it is not at all a requirement to think about, like, if you haven't done meaningful design work that you can be proud of, don't feel like you need to go out of your way to make something to demonstrate that. What we're really interested in is those with supplementary materials is, what have you, what kind of work have you done? And we're especially looking at, like, how do you approach either problem solving or your intellectual background or making or other aspects. So really, I take that it's worth investing some time in, but at the very least, what you want to do is you want it to be an accurate representation of your work and what you've done to prepare for graduate study. So like Matt said, it is I've looked at really great GitHub projects. I've seen lots of research papers that psychology students or anthropology students have prepared to talk about the relationship between humans and technology, but that didn't have any major design, like real craft design work as part of it. So don't consider that you would be disqualified or even not considered because you don't have any evidence of that. That's we're looking for people with a lot of different backgrounds, and we embrace anything that you can submit to demonstrate your preparation.
Yeah, I think that's really good to emphasize that. We have seen some people who get the mistaken idea that the supplementary material is where they're going to try out new skills that they're hoping to develop. And we really are looking for you to show us what you are already doing. Rest on what your accomplishments are at this point. Sometimes people have stretched out a little too far into a direction that they're hoping to develop down the road. So I think I'm ready to go on to the next one. Just a couple of words about international applicants, and then I think we're going to wrap up with the presented material and go straight to questions. International applicants, almost everything is the same. You'll want to check the requirements for demonstrating your English language proficiency. There are a number of different methods of demonstrating English language proficiency for the US, for the University of Washington. If you're using the TOEFL scores, we ask for 106 minimum with a 26 minimum in the speaking subsection. You need to have graduated from a 4-year program that's accredited. If it's not a 4-year degree granting or 4-year program, then you're going to have needed to have additional work such as a master's degree on top of it. And then be sure to convert your GPA to a 4-point scale. There are many different methods of evaluating students in the US and internationally, and we ask you to present it as a 4-point scale. All right, I think now we are ready to just take over with questions. I'm going to start in with a couple of that I've seen go by that maybe have been repeated a couple times. As Michael and I work on answering several of these questions, if you're not hearing yours answered, you might consider putting it up again, refreshing and putting it down near the bottom again. I've seen some questions asking for a comparison between the HCDE program and the MHCI+D program. That's a good comparison to look at. We've got a number of sort of structural differences that we talk about on the website under resources. Know that the HCDE program is a much larger program that's designed to be work compatible. Most of the courses are in the evening, and most students, maybe half of the students at least, are working full time. So when we've talked about how we're interested in the cohort model and working together intensely, that's very different than the HCDE structure. a decent amount of the content and curriculum is fairly similar. We're much more focused on using this studio model and project-based learning for a lot of what we cover. The area, the field space that you're covering might be a lot of similar things. We're a much more designed curriculum that has required steps that almost everybody takes together. HCDE has different tracks and more emphasis on sort of designing your own pathway and relying more on electives than what we do. They both have a lot to offer each other. HCDE is one of our sponsoring departments, so we like their program a lot, but it is a very different experience of going through and learning about these materials in this field.
Yeah, I won't belabor that, but it's true. It's mostly just in model. An awful lot about our topics overlap, and it's also a little bit in where our faculty are drawn from. That's the other thing to consider, is that most teachers in HCDE are members of that faculty or members of the extended HCDE professional community, whereas ours are drawn from all of the member departments, and you'll get the right an instructor for a class based on where we think that the best contribution can be based on our faculty pool. Okay, so I'm scrolling back up to the chat for some of the questions that were asked at 6:20. So we have a lot of those. Jacob, I know I've seen a lot of questions from you in the chat, and there are some things I want to address. It's not typical that people with extensive experience usually apply to this program. Like if you're looking for like an executive education program, then I can make some suggestions to you offline. I got your email and I'll follow up separately around that. But there are some other ones that I want to address. So our Frog and IDEO sponsoring work, yes, traditionally they have. Frog has sponsored projects in the last 2 years, and they've committed to again this year, and IDEO is joining us first year. And then around proposing and defining your own problem and solution, that is almost entirely what our Capstone project looks like. So you even say, like, here's an area that we want to explore, and as part of your Capstone project, you say, here is the problem and here is the response. So it very much is like following that model. As for how teams are built in Capstone, what we do is we run a series of workshops in the winter as part of our Capstone planning class that help you identify other aspects of or other people in the cohort that you want to work with, or that are interested in the same sorts of things that you'll work on. And then you'll make a recommendation to the Capstone faculty and around who you want to work with and even who you don't want to work with. And then teams are formed from that process, and you're aligned to Capstone sponsors based on that output. Capstone sponsors, they usually come, so that's as part of my portfolio of work as director, is that I recruit these companies. And so normally my plan would be to have them fully aligned by before the end of the fall quarter. So normally we have an idea before we even start Capstone process, who the sponsors are. We do bring our own in, and you'll be aligned to one of the teams. It's also why we like to have a good mix of people working from the large tech companies and from design consultancies and from other smaller, maybe nonprofit organizations when we can. When they find an interest and we have someone that can be aligned around good mentorship. If that's the case, then we'll find them as they are, but we bring a full rank that is enough for one for each of the teams. All right. I'm sorry I'm going fast. I'll try to slow down.
So I see JT asks at 6:31, are most applicants already working professionals in the field or no? And somebody else seconded that question. We really do have a mixture. About a third of the students this year's class are within a year of graduating from their last education program, usually undergrad, and a larger group are about 2 to 5 years out. That's about 40% who have had usually 1, maybe 2 solid jobs and want to pivot into this field. A smaller proportion of the 3 is the people with more than 5 years of work experience. So we're typically recent graduates or within 5 years of graduation.
Okay. So there's some questions about financial support. There was one about scholarships, and then another about the role that assistantships and fellowships play in our graduate students. So it's really clear there are several different scholarships. There are Dub fellowships that we offer that are granted by the faculty committee, usually based on the top admits. Although there are other modes that those fellowships will be awarded. They're based on your application. And so that's a portion that is given out to some students. That's one avenue, but that's a merit-based part of our process. There are other things that are available on campus funding-wise. We can direct you to some of those if you're interested, but the most important thing to recognize is that graduate students in our program do not do research or teaching assistantships. There is no time, and that is not a way that the program can support the people doing those things, because the obligation is usually more than 20 hours per week. For those courses, are around 20 hours per week, and it that just doesn't work itself out. So we don't offer assistantships or fellowships for students in the program.
Yeah, I would say the majority of students in the program end up funding through their own financing, student loans and the like. There's limited financial resources available, so don't want to overestimate how much we can expect to offer there. You know, in the long term, it's definitely financially worthwhile to do a program like this. That doesn't change the short-term obligation and burden. It is an expensive undertaking, but it is just 1 year before you've moved upward in your career trajectory.
I want to talk a little bit about recommendations. So this is a question that I'm seeing throughout. Recommendations, we do strongly recommend that you seek out the people that can best speak to your capabilities. That is not to say that you need to get all academic references or all professional references. It can be a mix of the above. Usually you want someone who is more senior than you. So a direct peer probably isn't a great recommendation, but a manager or a mentor or other people that can provide an informed recommendation is what you really want. So really do consider what can they say about you, either as a learner, as a practitioner, or as a thinker or scholar. Like, those things are really important, and you want to make sure that you approach having letters written that are deliberate and without a question positive. So like, I hope that answers a lot of those questions about that. Chris Horing, you asked, is the program more design-based? Yes. While there is no shortage of research, technology, and prototyping in the program, most of these things are oriented towards design outcomes. So do expect that design is an important part. We are HCI+D, and those are not weighted by the number of letters, but rather they are both HCI and design. And that's both of those parts are balanced.
I see a couple of questions about nuts and boltsy things that we may or may not have time to get to. Somebody asked about non-native speakers with a degree from a U.S. institution. Do they need the TOEFL? No. If you have an accredited degree from a U.S. institution, you're all set there. You'll indicate it on the application. Another person asked about GPAs and being just under the 3.2 expectation. I'd encourage you to look at the different ways you can calculate your GPA. Realistically, with the high number of applications, if you're under 3.2, it's not impossible, but it's going to be very difficult to get admitted. So you'll want to look at those different methods of calculation. We're an academic program, not so that we really do rigorously expect you to be able to do graduate level academic work. And so we're looking for some way of having demonstrated that in the past.
There are a few questions about portfolio. What sort of things do you want to share? Or if you are like coming from an alternative or not an alternative background, but one of the other areas that we typically draw from, like psychology, how can you demonstrate that? So the first thing is for the design for supplementary materials. Designs you've made on the side are totally reasonable. They are things to include, especially if you're particularly proud or if they demonstrate your craft capabilities. As far as making a specific portfolio that goes in depth on a few projects, I think that can be very valuable and useful, but either way, if it has a variety of projects, like you want to go forward and show the thing that best demonstrates your capabilities. If you are like coming from a psychology, social science, computer science background, show us examples of your work. If you worked in a research lab, show us the research that you were doing. Talk about how that informed or contextualize that work for us in a way that helps us understand how that work led you to an interest in HCI and design. And then additionally, if you're in computer science, talk about like why you want to focus on HCI and design as a reflection of some technology or engineering skills that you've had in the past. So these are the sorts of things is that it's not enough to merely submit them. You want to contextualize the work that you've done and explain how it fits you as a person and practitioner, and how your specific knowledge and expertise are appropriate for HCI+D and make you a great member of the cohort. Questions about concentrations in VUI or voice. This is an interesting topic and something that's coming up commonly from industry people that I intersect with. We're in the process of developing VUI courses, and there are plenty of opportunities to use those technologies or to explore them through the project work that we have. So it's to say that if you are interested in voice in much the same way if you are interested in VR, AR, or MR, there are ways to explore those topics through our studio courses or through the electives that you take. But as far as I know, we don't have a specific VUI course yet. There might be one that emerges, and there probably are a lot of like research groups that are working on those topics as well.
Yeah, I think at least a couple of the Capstone teams last year, their projects ended up incorporating a VUI element into them.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that continues to be used more and more throughout the program.
So I think we answered this question, but I do want to reiterate that again, we have a mix of applicants that are coming directly from undergrad and that have between 1 and 3 years of work experience. We do try to create a mix. Like that's one thing that we look at when assembling a cohort, but it's just one part of many, and there's no like we let it emerge based on our applicants. So okay.
Let's see, looking through, if you have specific questions about your own situation in the application process or qualifications, I'd encourage you to drop me an email. We can take that offline and I can look more in detail at what several of you have asked about various portions of qualification or requirements and the like. So we could definitely do that offline. MHCI+D@uw.edu, that comes right to me.
A question that came up about getting in contact with professors to talk about possible research opportunities. If you're interested in working with a specific professor in a specific lab, I strongly encourage you to consider PhD level studies instead of MHCI+D. We have opportunities galore to work on projects of your own definition, but if you're interested in specific working with a particular person or in a particular topic, that indicates to me that you might be interested in more focus and concentration. And so please do consider like what your overall academic objectives are. In the meantime, if you reach out to professors and say you're considering applying to MHCI+D, they may or may not respond as a result of that. But just keep in mind that if that's your intention, talk to us first and we'll either Matt or myself, and we'll help you better understand what your options are at UW.
All right, I see someone has asked about acceptance rate in the program, just to give you an idea of how the application acceptance rate goes. Right, if last year was any guide, and we think it'll be pretty close to a guide of what we're expecting this year, we have about a 10% acceptance rate through the application process. So know that it is a very selective program and we're seeing a lot of highly qualified students. On the other end of the year, somebody asked how quickly people are getting hired after they graduated. The way those numbers break down, at graduation day, a very low number of students will be walking across the stage with a job in hand. I think it was about a half a dozen students last year, about 20% of the cohort. We look at 3 months after graduation as the time when we really check in to see how each cohort is doing. And by then, we tend to have about 70% of the students employed full-time in a industry-related position. And then by 6 months out, over 90% of the cohort, of the graduated cohort, is employed in the field. So employment doesn't necessarily come pre-graduation for most people, but it has been very rapid, and our students are finding good, interesting jobs and fields that they want to work on pretty rapidly.
There were a few questions about resumes and other the way that we incorporate different backgrounds or things like that in the application process. So the question around how deliberate are we around building like our cohort? What we find is that the cohort itself, we've seen a number of things. The way that it's weighted is that we look first at who the best students are, and they usually get they're usually the ones that our cohort or academic or application committee is most excited about. As a result, then what we look at is the statements and backgrounds. So like, what did you learn? Where did you study? What informs who you are as a practitioner? And then we try to build especially around intellectual expert or diversity first. So we try to build it deliberately from a number of different backgrounds. So that's usually the first opportunity. And then within that, the committee looks for things that are even less so around other criteria. So first and foremost is intellectual or expertise background. And then if you're interested in examples of capstone projects, those are all available on our website. You can go and watch presentations and see portfolios from other people.
Yeah, when you're wondering about composition projects, what students look like in the program as far as their backgrounds and the like, definitely check out our website. Look under people, look under our alumni and class tags, and you can sort of spend some time going through profiles of almost all of our students, our past students. Nora's class, the current one, is getting ready to get their page up as well. It's not up there yet, so you can't quite look at the current student group, but they'll be up there before long.
Praveen, there are no quotas or limits of the balance between international students. We select the best students regardless of where they're from. So Amy, you're saying you're interested in hardware design and user experience. I would say that's not necessarily the focus of our program. I think that there are some industrial programs, but I would want to talk to you more about your goals in thinking about hardware design and the relationship to user experience before saying for sure that MHCI+D isn't right for you. Okay, that's what we're not answering. Is high GPA an advantage? Not necessarily.
Yeah,
again, we look at the complete picture.
Yeah, you want to be over the cutoff bar, and then once you're over that cutoff bar, then we're looking at everything, and strength in every element is helpful, but that's just one piece of your whole story.
Yep. Can you apply to MHCI+D and HCDEMS at the same time? Yes, absolutely. We see quite a bit of overlap in the applications.
Someone asked if there's an interviewing part of the application process and if there's a wait list. Interviews are possible, but pretty minimally used. Don't worry about interviews. If we need them, we'll reach out to you. It's not something we've relied on heavily. Wait list, we do have a wait list typically most years, but that's something that varies from year to year, so we don't have a standard setup of how we're expecting to run our wait list.
A great question that you asked about being an open-minded student versus focused students. I think we actually see a mix of people that come in that are interested in the topic but unsure about what they want to do with it, and they come into the program specifically thinking like, I would like to get a clearer picture of what this entails, and like how to do the work, and then decide for themselves after the fact where they want to go. You mentioned that you're interested in digital health, and we actually have quite a bit of opportunity in that area, and we see students coming into the program interested in that, and then shifting as they learn more about the program. And then again, we've also had other people that have come in saying, I'm specifically interested in health, and then closing that, like working all year and developing a portfolio, and then continuing to work or closing work in design strategy or healthcare in those areas. So I think that you can use the year to help work through the different aspects of what you want to do in HCI and design, and how, and then decide for yourself after the fact.
Go ahead.
Normally, around design management, we don't see people necessarily going into design management directly after the program. We do see that as a career track that some of our graduates, especially from the early cohorts, are moving into now as their careers are maturing. And then what are the relations like among the cohort and the faculty? Hey, VJ, do you want to unmute and answer that question? If he's still there.
I'm not sure if Nora.
Sorry about that. The relationships among the cohort and the faculty. Yeah. So it really is up to you what your relationship, like what you want your relationship to be like with faculty members. I personally have at least emailed or gone to the office hours of all my professors. They're really invested in you and your future. I've had conversations about things from like conversations about projects to like career advice, and they're all like really responsive, and they each have their own teaching style. But I will say that like the relationship between teacher and faculty at MHCI+D, since there's about 30-40 students, they all know you by a first name basis, and they'll like, as long as they'll show you the door, and they're not gonna like handhold you and like hold your hand and walk you through the door. You have to walk through that door yourself, but the relationship's pretty open.
Yeah. I have a really tight relationship with every student. That's an important part of what we do, and how I tend to lead the program is I want us to be in touch, and I want the faculty to be involved, and we're taking steps to even improve that this year with the broader faculty community at UW. So Casey, you asked, most people are 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 years out of graduation. That is reflecting of the, it's mostly people are either fresh out of school or within 3 years. That's just a matter of who's been in the program before. It's not something that we select for. So one of the things that we can say is that we look at your application and we do ask, like, are you going to get something out of this program? But if you are, if you've been working 5 years or more, it's still, there are many people that come to the program and have been accepted that have had more than 5 years professional experience, for instance. So it's not a hard criteria. we like people with to be in the cohort to have some experience usually, but again, it's not a strong indicator of acceptance or rejection at all.
So we're getting close to our 7:30 cutoff, and I want to be mindful of our time. We could probably answer a little bit more, but I know there are several of you who had questions out there, and again, want to just remind you that you can take those offline. Email us at mhcid@uw.edu, and we can answer more questions. If you had one in here that you want to get talked to, we'll do it one-on-one from here.
Yeah. I want to answer these last two questions, which is, why is the program designed to be only 1 year? We think that's an important thing to offer people. And I believe that 1 year of focused, intense work is a really great way to learn this practice. It's not too dissimilar, like working in an established design studio. You're working on projects, you're doing work, you're expected to produce deliverables. And so we think that this 1 year is a really great way to learn and to be in the moment. There's no distractions. You are just here to learn those topics. And so MHCI+D is designed around this 1 year offering. And we think that it's especially good for people that are willing to take a break from their lives or careers for 1 year and really learn and focus on this content. So then the question is we don't see a correlation between graduate record exams and intellectual merit. Some other questions have come up around that. We have elected not to review the GREs because it has not been traditionally, like, high GRE scores are not correlated to acceptance in our program. We are interested in the story that you tell the admissions committee and the construction of all the different aspects of who you are as a person and a student and a practitioner. So I think that's the most important thing to consider. You want to tell the best, most concise, and most complete story of who you are to the admissions committee through the various avenues that we've asked for in the application. So mhcid@uw.edu is the email address. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. Visit our website, and if you have anything, know that we're here to help.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming today. Somebody asked about the recording. I'm planning on sending it out to everybody who RSVP'd. It looks like we did get capped at 100, so I think some people weren't able to get in today. So if the recording worked and it says it's still recording, we'll send you a link before too long in the next couple days. Thank you, VJ. Thank you, Nora. And thanks everybody for tuning in and staying here for the whole session.
Of course, it was fun.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Goodbye.